Next up, let's talk about adding and subtracting functions. We can add functions together, we can evaluate functions, we can do all kinds of stuff with functions. Now we want to add them and subtract them. So let's see what that looks like. I have two functions. F of x is given by the function x plus 1. G of x is defined as negative x plus 3. We want to find these three things. So let's start by finding what f of 3 plus g of 3 is. And I should probably actually make a note. These are the definitions up here about how to add these functions. This is, if I wanted to add f of x plus g of x, that's the same thing as, we would say this, f plus g of x. Let's say f plus g of x. That's actually speak these things. F of x minus g of x is the same thing as f minus g of x. So you might see these notations used interchangeably. So let's find what f of 3 plus g of 3 is. So that's let's first find what f of 3 is. F of 3 is going to equal 3 plus 1, which is equal to 4. And g of 3 is going to equal negative 3 plus 3, which equals 0. So let's just take these values and we'll add them up. 4 plus 0, that's f of 3 plus g of 3, which is equal to 4. Pretty easy. All right, let's make things a little bit more complex. This now is asking me to find f plus g of x. Remember, that's the same thing as taking f of x plus g of x. So in general, let's add these two functions together. Let's take f of x, which is x plus 1. Actually, let me write above this, f of x plus g of x. And so what I'm going to do is I'll take f of x, which is x plus 1. And I'm going to add that to g of x, which is negative x plus 3. We'll add all these things up. X's become 0, and this all actually equals 4 as well. Hey, what a coincidence. All right, so now what I can do with, actually what's nice about this, let me just pause before we go to the next problem, is if I wanted to find f of 9 plus g of 9, I've found this composite, or this new function where I'm adding f of x plus g of x, and this actually gives me the function if I wanted to evaluate something like f of 3 plus g of 3. If I wanted to find what f of 9 plus g of 9 is, I could use the general f plus g of x, which is just equal to 4, and I could find out that f plus g of 9 is equal to 4. So that's kind of helpful. Last, let's talk about f minus g of 6. This is going to be the same thing as f of 6 minus g of 6. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do this kind of in a different way. Let's find what the general f of x minus g of x is. So actually, I'm going to change this. Before I even evaluate by plugging in my 6 as my input, let's first figure out what f of x minus g of x is equal to. So just like before, I'm going to evaluate, or I'm going to use my functions. X plus 1 is f of x minus, now let's subtract the entire g of x, negative x plus 3. That's this one right here. So this, I have to distribute the negative. I like to think of this as multiplying everything by negative 1, so that makes this positive, that makes this negative. So that means that this is going to simplify into 2x minus 2. So this is equal to f minus g of x. So how is this helpful? If I want to find f minus g of 6, that just means that I need to plug a 6 into the input, or to the x value of my function f minus g of x. So now I don't need to find what f of 6 is and subtract that by g of 6 since I've created this new function f minus g of x. So this will be 12 minus 2, which is equal to 10. So there you go, adding, subtracting functions. Why don't you try these three examples, pause the video, and when you're ready, you can check your answers. Okay, here is the workings out for these three problems. Hopefully they went all right. If you need to double check your work, please do so, and you can look at my work in these problems as well.